Hello everyone, this is Dr. Muhammad Abrar and welcome back to today's lecture. As we know, today we are diving into a business and the cost of the productions. So this chapter develops a crucial cost concepts that are foundational for analyzing the four basic market models in upcoming chapters. And you know that we have already divided this chapter into three parts. In the first part, I already explained the short run production relations. So today in the second part, we will discuss the various types of the cost that business faces in short run, including the fixed, variable, and the total cost. So let's kick off with a deep dive into today's discussion about short run cost concepts. Short run production cost. We have certain types of the cost like fixed cost, variable cost, and the total cost in short run period. So the fixed, variable, and the total cost are the cost. That's a short run classification of cost. So in the short run, the cost can be variable or fixed. Fixed cost examples the rental payments, insurance premiums, interest payments, that's are fixed, that's are not depending on the level of output, that's free from the depending from the output level. Variable cost, on the other hand, that's a payments for the materials, raw material, payment for the fuel or energy, or maybe the transportation cost, maybe the labor wages, etc. And that's purely depending on the level of output. So more the level of output, more with the variable cost. And meanwhile, the total cost, that is just a sum of the total fixed and the total variable cost at each level of the output. You will get the total cost. So you just need to sum the total fixed cost plus total variable cost. You will get your total cost. That's the diagram of short-run production cost where we have a red curve that's representing the total fixed cost. We have a light blue, that's the total variable cost, the dark blue, that's the total cost. On x-axis, we have taken the quantity, the production, and on y-axis, we have taken the cost. So the total fixed cost, that represents the portion of the total cost that remain constant regardless of the level of output produced within the specific period. So this cost includes the expenses such as a rental amount, the insurance payments, maybe the administrative salaries that do not vary with the production level, like the salaries for the managers and the accountant, etc. Meanwhile, in contrast, the total variable cost that fluctuates directly with the quantity of the output produced. So these costs encompasses the expenses such as the raw material, the labor directly involved in the productions, the wages for that labor, and maybe the utility that increases or decreases with the production levels. So the relationship between the total cost, the total fixed cost, and the total variable cost is fundamental in cost analysis. Total cost is simply the sum of the total fixed cost and the total variable cost at any given output level. So illustrating the vertical addition of the fixed cost and the variable cost. So graphically, the total cost and the total variable cost are represented as parallel curves on the cost output diagram. So that reflecting how the total cost increases with the production while the total variable cost contribute to this increase proportionately to the output while the total fixed cost remain constant. So as we can see here, at that particular quantity, the first arrow is representing the total cost. That total cost can be divided into the first portions, the total variable cost, and then the total fixed cost. So if you'll just plus the total fixed cost and the total variable cost vertically, you will get your total cost. Total cost curve is always remain above the total variable cost, and the gap between the total variable cost and the total cost, that's a difference of the total fixed cost. These the per unit cost. They are useful in making the comparison of prices. So the average fixed cost that reflect the per unit procedures, where the average variable cost that's reflect the variable cost per unit produced, and the average total cost can also be found by adding the average fixed cost and the average variable cost, or it can be the average total cost divided by the quantity. And the marginal cost here play an extremely important role in firms decision making about how much they will produce. So the marginal cost reflects the additional cost associated with the producing one more unit of output. So the marginal cost tells a firm how much it will cost to increase output by one more unit. Marginal cost essentially measures the rate of change of the total cost. This is a very simple table where we have calculated different types of cost. So this table shows the total cost on the left half, or a per unit cost on the right half part for an individual firms in the short run. We know this is a short run because there are fixed costs. So you can see in the first column we have taken the output, we have taken the quantity, and in the second column we have a total fixed cost, and then we have a total variable cost, and then we have total cost. So now if you can see, the total fixed cost is remain same at every level of output. If the output level is increasing, the total fixed cost is remain same. Meanwhile, the total variable cost is increasing as the output is increasing, and the total cost, that is just a summation of the total fixed cost and the total variable cost. Like at the quantity of 0, when the total fixed cost is 100 and the total variable cost is 0, so if you'll plus 100 and 0, you'll get the total cost, that is 100 at the quantity of 0. If you are producing quantity 1, if the firm is producing quantity 1, the total fixed cost is 100, the total variable cost is 90, and the total cost will be 190. So we just need to plus horizontally. And meanwhile, if you will go to the next column, here we have a average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average cost, and lastly we have a marginal cost. Again, these are the per unit cost. Average fixed cost mean here, for the first quantity, 100 divided by 1, you will get the average fixed cost. At the second quantity, when the firm is producing 2 units, so the total fixed cost is 100, so 100 divided by 2, you will get the average fixed cost of the 2 units. Similarly, you can calculate the average variable cost. Like at the first, when the total variable cost is 90 and the 1 unit is produced, so the average variable cost for the first unit will be 90. If you can see for the second, when the firm is producing 2 units, the average variable cost is 170. So here you can get 85 as a average variable cost for the each unit when the firm is producing 2 units. And lastly, the average cost, you just need to plus the average fixed cost and the average variable cost. We will get the average cost at every level of production. And lastly, here we have the marginal cost. Marginal cost simply, that is representing the change in the total cost by changing the output. So like here, if we are moving from 0, the firm is moving from 0 to 1 production. So the total cost is increased from 100 to 190, and the change is 90. That 90 is extra because of the first unit of the production. So the marginal cost representing for the first unit is 90. If the firm is moving the production from 1 to second unit, first to second unit, so how much the total cost is increased? 190 to 270. So the difference between 270 and 190, that is 80. That's representing that how much the second unit is making the cost. That's a marginal cost. If we can see the diagrams for the average cost, so the average fixed cost falls as a given amount of a fixed cost is approximated over a large and a larger output. So the fixed cost will continue to decrease as the output will be increasing, but it will never touch to 0. It will be closer. It will go becomes closer to the 0, because the average cost, the total average cost is remain fixed. So when we calculating the average fixed cost, so that's a fixed cost per unit. So as the output is increasing, the total fixed cost is declining. Meanwhile, the average variable cost initially it becomes falls because of increasing the marginal returns, but then rises because of the diminishing marginal returns. And similarly, the average total cost is a vertical sum of the average variable cost and the average fixed cost. So the only difference between the average total cost and the average variable cost, that's the average fixed cost. Just remember the average total cost, that is the average fixed cost plus average variable cost, or you can say the average fixed cost is average total cost minus average variable cost. So the vertical distance between the average total cost and average variable cost, that is a average fixed cost. So you want to get used to measuring the average fixed cost in this way, because at some point the average fixed cost will no longer be included in the graph. So maybe it will be very closer to zero. If we can see the shift in the curves that will occur if either resource price or technology change. So for example, if the fixed cost includes or increase, both the average fixed cost and average total cost shift upward. If the labor cost rises, then the average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost will be shifted. So as we can see in this diagram, that represents the relationship of the marginal cost curve to the average cost and the average variable cost curve. So the marginal cost curve here, it cut through the average total cost and average variable cost curve at their minimum points. So when marginal cost curve is below the average total cost curve, so average total cost curve falls. When marginal cost curve is above the average total cost, so the average total cost curve start rising. Similarly, when the marginal cost is below the average variable cost here, so that time the average variable cost falls. When the marginal cost is above the average variable cost curve, so the average cost curve will start rising. So the marginal decisions are very important in determining the profit level. In order to make the marginal decisions, so marginal revenue and marginal cost are compared. So the marginal cost is a reflection of the marginal product and diminishing returns. When diminishing return begins, the marginal cost will begin at its rise. Lastly, if we can have a look on this diagram where we have a marginal product and average product on an upper diagram, and we have a marginal cost and average cost on the lower diagram. So the marginal cost curve and the average variable cost curve are a mirror image of the marginal product and the average product. So assuming that the labor is the only variable input and its prices is constant, then when the marginal product is rising, so the marginal cost will decline. When the marginal product is declining, the marginal cost will increase. So under the same assumption, when the average product is increasing, then the average variable cost is decreasing. When the average product is declining, the average cost is increasing. That's a mirror image of these both concepts. So keeping simple in mind, when the average and the marginal cost is declining, that time its marginal productivity and the average productivity is on increase. When the marginal productivity and the average productivity is declining, so that time the marginal product and average variable cost is increasing. That's all for today's lecture. If you have any question, comment or feedback, feel free to share them in the comment section below. Also, if there are specific topics you would like me to cover in future lectures, just mention them in the comment section. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more informative lectures and learning content. Thank you for being a part of this virtual gathering. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring.